Welcome, good afternoon, good morning, good evening. So I would like to give opening to our second part of our Climate Academy, which we run between UCLG, United Cities and Local Government World Secretariat, and PLATFORMA and the CEMR, the European section. So a warm welcome to all of you who have been yesterday already with us. It was a very inspiring afternoon for everybody. We got very good feedback and we thank you very much for this. And you might remember, or those who were not with us yesterday, was particularly interesting because we had inputs of the European Union and then responses from local government on the way how climate policies like the Green Deal finally trigger down. We also counted on a keynote of an expert. So we have looked in the big challenge climate change is posing to all of us, and then different ways to address this and to take this challenge up. So today we will look into more local solutions, and we will also, this might be interesting for all of those who are not European with us, we will look a lot into decentralized cooperation. So we will see how the climate change is used as an opportunity inside the municipalities, but also in partnerships and in cooperation generally. So then we will look into also the financing of climate action. So we will, of course, have some insights of the financial possibilities. We also count on investment bank and how partnerships can add value and combat climate change, and what, of course, are the different business opportunities. So not only granting, but what does investment mean? And there we will count on a very important expert. And then we will close our academy with the international context, because you all know we are United Cities and Local Government and also CEMR. We are very active in the COP in order to make the local voice heard and also the local action being supported. And we will give a little bit of backup on this, looking into past COPs and also in COPs to come. So I would also like to introduce myself. I'm Sarah Höflich. I'm the director of UCLG Learning, and I'm very honored to have all you with us. We will do this meeting in 2 blocks, so you can have a small break at around 4. And the first block will look into the climate action at the local level. And then after the break, we look into the financial opportunities and in the different possibilities of decentralized cooperation. Please remind, the meeting is recorded, and we also will take a picture. So in more or less half an hour, we would very much appreciate if you put your cameras on. Around before the break, we will take a group picture then. And last announcement for housekeeping is that we have an evaluation form, which you hopefully can fill on time, because it's very important for us. Yesterday, our secretaries general from UCLG and also from CEMR, they gave a lot of value. So this is for us, this Climate Academy is a pilot, which is maybe to be replicated in other formats, with other topics. But in order to do things better, we need your feedback. And so please don't hesitate to ask us. And Eva, I think, has already shared the evaluation form. So yeah, this is the day that expect us, afternoon or the morning for you. And now my colleague Eva will introduce the first speaker. Eva is working in PLATFORMA, and she is behind this Climate Academy, both as an expert and also as our manager and coordinator of the Academy. Thank you, Eva, and up to you.
Thank you very much, Sarah, for the warm welcome, and welcome everyone. And I also have to thank those who are connecting at a very late times from different parts of the world. Okay, so many thanks for the effort that you're making. So as Sarah said, we have a challenging day. So yesterday was about the international European context. Today is going to be more local perspective. So I'm happy to welcome our keynote speaker, who's Kes McCormick. He's participated in previous academy in the past, and he's a professor at the International Institute for Industrial Environmental Economics, Lund University in Sweden. So he's going to be talking to us about the process of carbon neutrality. He's going to be talking about the process to accelerate the climate action at the local level. He will be presenting some case studies and also some references to the EU Mission 100 climate neutral cities. So, Kes, you have the floor, and then we will give him the floor for 20 minutes, and then we have questions and answers from the audience. So I also encourage you to put your questions in the chat. We're monitoring that, and then you will be also offered the possibility to ask the questions directly. Many thanks, and Kes, you have the floor.
Thanks a lot. I'll see if I can bring my slides up and if we can show them to everybody. They should be up on the screen now. Yep, thank you so much for the introduction and the invitation to be part of this Climate Academy. As Eva said, I work at Lund University in Sweden, but also at the Swedish University for Agricultural Sciences, so 2 universities. And my background is in political science and environmental science. And I've worked on this topic of cities and climate change for about 20, 25 years or so. As you can probably hear from my accent, I'm originally from Australia, but I've worked and lived in Europe for some 20 years. So I consider myself semi-European and a little bit Australian still. I'd just like to start by saying that, yeah, I really applaud the efforts of the organisers to create the Climate Academy. I think this is exactly the type of initiative which is absolutely vital to ambitious climate action in cities around the world. And I also applaud the participants, those people that are joining us. The key to kind of making step changes or transitions or so on is learning. If you're interested in learning, you'll always have the possibility for change. So I applaud essentially everyone who's here, and it's great to be here and to be part of this process. And I think that we can all learn from each other, and I think that we can inspire each other. And today I'm going to talk very much around cities and their relationship to climate change and climate action. And I look forward to lots of questions. You can bombard me with questions in the chat, and I'll try to get to them at the end. But yeah, let's start off by just putting forward a bit of an agenda, the kind of things I thought I would talk about today. As Eva said, I'm going to start by talking about the kind of the broader context and then go straight into the mission for 100 climate neutral cities by 2030. This is an enormous initiative in Europe, which I think is creating fantastic momentum behind cities, but it has its strengths and it has its weaknesses, and we'll have a bit of a chat about that. A key topic for cities is, of course, financing urban climate action, how we're going to get financing to flow in a big way to support cities and their ambitions and visions. And then I thought I would talk a little bit about the actual activities and actions we can see taking place in cities that are working on the missions approach, and to connect that into the kinds of skills and capacities that we need if we want to have transformative change. The thing is here, they're quite different skills to perhaps what we're taught or have been teaching for a very long time. And then I thought I would finish off with a few final slides. We'll see if we can pack them in, but it's important to remember that it's not just climate change for cities. There's many other activities that we need to think about or topics we need to think about, and I'm going to connect into those at the end of this presentation. So to kick off, it's worth just providing a bit of a context for what's been happening with cities and climate change for several decades now. I think we can say back that in the early 1990s, local governments began to position themselves or position cities as central to the international efforts to address climate change. And there were some very good reasons why cities have been lifted up over these many decades, many different times. And I would say their role today is more important than ever. Cities are certainly part of the problem and part of the solution. Cities are responsible for an enormous amount of greenhouse gas emissions and consumption, but they're also places of incredible innovation and possibilities. And we know how cities can transform and how they have transformed over history. Cities are obviously then key to both mitigation and adaptation. They're both about reducing emissions, but also about adapting to a changing climate. And the reality is that adaptation needs to happen very quickly. And the IPCC sums this up pretty well when it says that cities are hotspots of global climate emissions and risk. We heard the term risk mentioned yesterday, and there's several reports around risks, climate risks for cities in Europe and around the world. But they're also a hub for innovation, action, and resilience. So cities are definitely the place where we need to have action. It's also important to remember and to continually repeat to ourselves that climate change is not just a technological problem. It is a technological, political, economic, social, and cultural challenge, and we need to treat it in that way. It's also an extraordinary opportunity for positive transformation. Almost all the things I'm going to talk about today, the types of actions and activities that cities can take, result in co-benefits and result in all kinds of benefits to many people living in cities and outside of cities. So climate action is essentially positive in many ways. So if we turn to the mission for 100 climate neutral cities, there's obviously a lot of history behind this. There's been a lot of activities before this, but I'll just focus on this particular mission. The European Commission launched this mission for 100 climate neutral cities in Europe by 2030. And the idea being to really pursue ambitious goals, drastic reductions in emissions, and to experiment with innovative approaches with citizens and urban stakeholders. And this mission is for all types of cities, for big cities, for medium cities, for small cities, for all types of cities. It's not for any particular type of city, it's for everyone. And it's obviously focused on Europe, but the mission itself is really quite an interesting, policy endeavour or governance endeavour that relates to other parts of the world as well. And there are around 100 or 112 cities that are part of the mission directly, but there are many other cities around it which are working exactly the same on urban climate action and so on. But these selected cities are definitely delving into kind of developing very ambitious strategies, which essentially put in place plans for climate neutrality by very close date, 2030 or close to that, and working across a variety of sectors, as I wrote about here. They're also being challenged to work very much with financing and partnering. And these are two of the absolute key challenges facing cities now, is how to unlock financing and how to expand the types of organisations that they partner with on this journey towards climate neutrality. So if we just talk about financing urban climate action, there's good news and there's bad news. And I'm going to tell you a bit about both. There's a study that I've been reading just recently, and I've used several slides on that study because I think it really paints a good picture of what's happening in Europe and reflects to what's happening around the world. The first thing we can see is that the financial capacities of local governments are pretty limited in most cities, particularly if we go outside the big cities like London, Paris, Stockholm, these kinds of cities. So financial capacities are limited, and there is definitely an unprecedented capital requirements to take on the challenge of climate neutrality. In other words, we need to invest a lot to start to change our path. And this study looked at the mission approach in Europe and looked at a self-reporting questionnaire by about 360 cities in Europe. So lots of cities self-reporting, essentially responding to a questionnaire about how they're going to engage with the mission or how they could engage with the mission of climate neutrality. And this study focused in on the financial situation for cities. And I thought I would just go into a few of the findings from this study. So I'll start with the bad news. The bad news is that this study shows that over 70% of cities in this study, which is like 360 cities, have not yet estimated, not even roughly, the total investment needed to become climate neutral. In other words, they have no idea how much it costs. That's a problem. That's a big problem. So we need to know the kind of costs in front of us to be able to, well, obviously unlock the finance towards meeting those costs. The majority of these that responded have also indicated that they've only got limited experience in financing specific climate projects. So the experience is actually lacking in many cities. They're ill-equipped to tap financial markets or capital markets. This is not surprising. Local governments and cities are often not set up to do these kinds of things. And they've really only developed marginally co-financing with the private sector. This is a big one because public-private partnerships will be absolutely key to climate neutrality in cities. And the last one here, they haven't kind of set up investor-ready pipeline of projects on climate neutrality. So there's a lot of challenges confronting cities when we're talking about financing urban climate action. So this is the bad news. The good news is that when we look at this assessment by cities that they are very much at the forefront of financial innovation. They're creating blueprints and business models that are being tested under, let's say, a learning by doing approach, and they're definitely establishing mechanisms with the new critical players. So they're reaching out and looking for new partnerships, and they're definitely active in this space of trying to unlock financing for climate action. In this context, we can also say that it's very clear that the kind of current way we set up the market and the current regulation and institutional arrangements are kind of key barriers to unlocking access to financing for cities. In other words, cities need help. Cities need the European Commission, they need national governments, and they need big organisations to be helping them along the way. So this is a collaborative effort. So this is just a bit of a snapshot of the kind of financial situation confronting cities, but it is important to connect the financing to the many activities that cities are engaging with when we talk about the mission towards climate neutrality. And here on your screen, you can see a bit of a list of kind of activities and actions that cities are engaging with. And this comes from my experience of working with the Swedish cities and European cities. This is kind of a general overview. So not all cities are doing all these things, but if you look across cities, you see these types of activities. And what we can see is that cities engage in, let's say, 5 main activities related to the mission. Visions and plans, data and tools, finance and partnerships, engagement and action, and research and innovation. And we need all those types of activities to fulfill the mission. And I thought I would just speak briefly about some more specific actions that cities are taking. Innovation teams, climate city contracts, climate investment plans, system demonstrators, and transformative portfolios. As you can see, it's a lot of information I'm going to pack in very quickly to the next slides, but it's important to recognise that to fulfil a mission on climate neutrality, we are going to need to be very ambitious. And we need to integrate, as it says here at the bottom of the screen, the conceptual, the strategic, and the practical. So we need to integrate our big thinking, our big picture thinking, our very strategic thinking, so how we go about taking action and meeting goals, and the practice of actually becoming climate neutral, which when it's wrapped up all together is system thinking and actions. So if we look at innovation teams, the first thing we see in cities which I think are leading from the front and cities that are really taking on the challenge of moving towards climate neutrality is innovation teams. And so this, a key foundation for developing visions and plans, as it says here on transformative change, is collaboration. It's not just municipalities that have to meet this goal, they have to do it in collaboration with many other organisations and individuals in cities. And innovation teams are kind of designed around 3 core ideas. The first is that they recognise the need to go beyond the borders of local municipalities and engage with diverse stakeholders. They are designed to continuously interact and engage with local citizens and communities. So we can't simply have one interaction with our local communities and then think it's done. We need this kind of continuous interaction. And this is tough work, but it's really important. And they need to recognise the importance to kind of work with activities, processes, and events that break away from business as usual. This is a key. We can't continue to do the same things we've always done and think we're going to have a different outcome. So if we continue along, city climate contracts or climate city contracts, these have been tested in Sweden, they're now spreading out across Europe. There are many ways to set up our kind of strategic agreements on climate neutrality, and this is one of them, this kind of contract approach, which is trying to connect kind of national, regional and local levels to work in new ways and to support each other, and trying to create a long-term commitment that ensures coordination between cities and the national government or national levels. And we can also see them as a process involving data and tools to inform decision-making and strategies. So here, the contracts are linked to data and evidence. So in other words, we've got ways to check if we're going in the right direction and so on, and we're linking that to our contracts and asking the tough questions of, are we going in the right direction fast enough? Then we can also see climate investment plans, which brings us back to the financing of urban climate action. Climate investment plans, absolutely key. This is not rocket science. This is essentially mapping out how we're going to finance our ambitions on climate neutrality and what types of partnerships we would need to do that. So they're about giving an overall picture of kind of the kinds of measures and investments that are needed to achieve goals. And they're also kind of a way to look outwards and look for kind of new and growing markets and opportunities that are out there for cities to engage in and to invest in and to be part of. Because again, like I said, cities are key players in the transition towards responding to climate change. So these kind of climate investment plans are also very future looking, like where can cities be in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years? System demonstrators. This is a fancy word. Cities all over Europe are working with system demonstrators. They give it different names, but essentially, achieving this mission on climate neutral cities demands a fundamental transformation of complex systems. And this means we actually need to be working directly with these systems, directly with our cities. In other words, we need to be doing things in our cities, small and big experiments, small and big changes in the cities. And we need to find new ways and new solutions that kind of bring together all of these things I'm talking about here. So system demonstrators, in short, are essentially doing things in cities that can demonstrate to us what we need to do across the whole city. So an example might be, there's a picture here of the Western Harbour in Sweden, in Malmö. The Western Harbour was a very ambitious district which set out to be, essentially be climate neutral, take away cars from this part of the city, introduce all kinds of things around waste management and so on, essentially tried to create a climate neutral city within a city. This is a really ambitious example, but you can have many other types of small examples where cities are working directly with experimenting, you might say, with how the city might look in the future. And finally, we also need to grapple with the reality that we have all kinds of policies and plans and strategies and documents and so on, which are all going on at once, and projects, and we need to connect them together. And this is a big challenge for cities and for all types of organisations. Transformative portfolios essentially make the argument that we need to connect the dots between these activities and make sure that one activity flows into another, and that projects are not working against each other and are connected. Essentially, this goes back to the idea of innovation teams and so on, that you have teams that are making sure that what's happening in the city and across the city is being coordinated in a smart way, and that you do get the full potential out of the investments you make towards becoming climate neutral. So as you can see, there's a lot of activities that cities are engaging in, the ones that are on the forefront, I think, of moving towards the climate mission, and many others. And this is just part of the story. So that part of the story is what cities need to do and perhaps how they need to do it. But behind that is a really big challenge to recognise that we need different skills and capacities within individuals and within organisations to kind of meet or to live up to these kinds of activities and actions. And the first I talked about already is around a learning mindset. Learning organisations, or having enough individuals in your organisations that are interested in learning, that are curious, that want to challenge the ways of doing things and so on, are very, very important. Without that kind of mindset, without that kind of approach, it's very difficult to embrace transformative change. So learning is a starting point. The second one is around systems thinking, but also critical systems thinking. It's very easy to think in straight lines. We all love to think in straight lines. It's much, much easier to go from A to B to C. But once we start to mix in letters and numbers and other symbols, and we have to move around and think in complex systems, it's tough. But this is what we need to do in our cities if we want to meet the challenge of climate neutrality. We need to start to back away and try to see the linkages between systems and to think critically about how these systems relate to each other. The next one is called deep listening. Deep listening is connected to learning, and it sounds rather simple. It's essentially listening to each other and being able to listen to people who you might not normally listen to, and being able to listen to different perspectives and different approaches, and to open yourself up to kind of complex and difficult information and perspectives. It's a great skill. You can test yourself on it sometime, go into a conversation or something and see how much you talk and how much you listen. You'll all be surprised that most of us talk a lot, we don't listen very much. So just simply listening a bit more to each other can actually open up opportunities for collaboration and so on. Co-creating abilities, this is referring to working together in collaboration. We need this constantly across the types of projects and activities with climate action. And the last one here, embracing experimentation, which I talked a bit about just now in the final slide. This is really this idea that we don't have a blueprint for what a climate neutral city looks like. We need to experiment with different ways we might organise and design such a city, and we need to be prepared that we could do things that we decide to go back on and change. So experimentation is a way for us to test new ideas and new technologies, new innovations. It's also a way to introduce new ideas, new technologies, new innovations to a population that has maybe not ready for these in a big scale, but once they see them in a small scale, thinks they're great and wants them everywhere. So that is essentially my main messages around climate neutrality in cities. And I thought I would just finish off now with a few slides just around other topics which I think are incredibly important to cities working on climate change, that we don't forget these other topics, which essentially underpin climate neutrality. And yesterday, our keynote speaker also talked around this topic. He talked about nature-based solutions and around nature and biodiversity loss, and I'm going to do the same thing. We have one enormous challenge, which is climate change. We have another one, which is the destruction of nature, ecosystems, and biodiversity loss. And we know that we have to bend the curve on this, and cities actually play an enormous role here. This can be through nature-based solutions, but it can also be through nature restoration, but essentially recognizing that there's a connection between our efforts on climate change and climate neutrality and our efforts to become nature positive. So to increase biodiversity, to protect biodiversity, to make sure that biodiversity in nature and ecosystems is part of our planning cities and part of our decision-making around cities. This is really, these two agendas are really coming together at a global scale, on international scale, and also national, and I think really coming down to the city scale as well. And here, cities once again play an enormous role in us being able to meet this type of goal. And I think we can talk about many examples from all over the world, but this is just important that we keep this in mind, that it's not just a climate change issue, it's also a biodiversity loss issue that we have to respond to in tandem. In addition to that, I'm just going to finish on these last two slides. There's a lot of discussion around the world in different communities and in different forums around the design of our economy, and if our economy actually meets the types of goals that we want it to meet. And this is one example of someone who's written on this topic. You may have heard of this concept called donut economics, very catchy title, written by Kate Raworth. And Kate Raworth wrote this book a few years back and really challenged the way we think about the economy and way economists think about the economy. And her argument was pretty simple. She said that there's this donut, and you can see the picture here on your screen, and the donut has a ceiling, an ecological ceiling, which I've been talking a lot about now, around climate change, biodiversity loss, these types of issues. And we cannot break through this ceiling. If we break through this ceiling, we have all kinds of problems, and we're already doing that. But in addition to this ceiling, we also need something called a social foundation. We need to ensure that people all around the world have water, food, energy, health, peace, justice, the list goes on. And without that social foundation, we have absolutely no hope of maintaining our ecological ceiling. So in short, we need to have a safe and just space for humanity. And this is a challenge, of course, for national governments and for the global level, but it is absolutely a challenge for cities all over the world. And this challenge is being embraced by cities all over the world. And I just encourage you to look at this, this work. I've got a link down the bottom here, which is to something called the Donut Economics Action Lab. They give some great examples of how cities are working with donut economics and new ways of thinking about the economy. And again, I think that this issue cannot be left behind in our discussions on climate change. Climate change is, as I said at the very beginning, more than just a technological issue. It's a social and cultural issue, and we need to have firmly in mind the social foundation of our cities and our societies. One more slide. I think I'm running out of time. I've been speaking for a while now, but if you're interested in anything I've talked about here today, it's all wrapped up and packaged in an online course, which is available for free, called Cities, Climate and Change. It's not quite as good as this Climate Academy because it's not in real time. It's more just recordings and so on, but it still can give you access to lots of materials and lots of information, and there's a free compendium and so on with the course. And this course kind of tackles this question of how we can develop transformative skills and capacities to achieve climate neutral and sustainable cities. And again, I would just say that I think that this Climate Academy, to finish on that note, is really working in this space around the types of skills and capacities we need. And I don't think anyone can tell you exactly what we need, even though I made a bit of a list. I think it's something that we have to develop together, and something that can be different in different cities around the world and different communities around the world. So it's not so much having a blueprint, but having a very robust and critical conversation together. So thank you very much for your time today. I look forward to your questions.
Okay. Many thanks, Kes. That was impressive. So I hope that everyone has enjoyed your presentation. As yesterday, all the presentations from yesterday and today are already on the website, so you can also take a look again. And I would just like to go through the chat, Kes, because we've got some questions and some comments. Okay.
I see 31 messages. This is bad. Okay, let's see.
Okay, no, but keep it cool. So lots of those are about introducing and the countries, the variety of countries. But we've got one question from our Secretary General Fabrizio, and it's like, how can we create an investment environment that is more prone to risk and adapted to the systemic transformation cities are attempting to implement at the local level? That's one question. And then I also have one comment from Greece. So I will just pack in blocks. And he says, Theodoros Ikramidis, he says that financing new projects against global warming is the biggest problem. And there are many projects that are fully studied and ready to be implemented, but the financial mechanism is very slow and complicated. And it involves many different governmental organizations and a very bureaucratic way to do it. So I've put these two together. So if you can maybe give a reflection, and then I will go to a second block.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think they're great questions. And I mean, essentially, I think we answer ourselves as well. I mean, as I said, I mean, I think this kind of how do we create this environment for unlocking financing is the question. I mean, I think it is being worked on, I would say, in Europe at many levels and across many organizations. And I think that we see some examples of cities around Europe starting to find ways to work from a bottom up. So for them to create that kind of openings up, this is a lot through public-private partnerships, through different ways of co-financing, through ways of kind of evaluating risks and showing very clearly that they need kind of partnerships across the city if they want to maintain the livability of their cities and so on. And then this kind of top-down, I think, is incredibly needed. I mean, basically, we need to help cities to access this financing, to open up financing. And here there's no silver bullets. I mean, there really requires a bit of a restructuring and rethinking of how we finance cities on their journey towards climate neutrality. And I think that the European Commission has done a fantastic job of setting up these missions and is funding all kinds of projects, you know, the types of projects that I'm involved in on research and innovation. We've managed to do all that, but this kind of unlocking of financing and bringing financial institutions into the conversation is the big next step. And I think it all starts with conversations, but then it's got to move pretty quickly towards actually opening wallets and then bringing the money out, essentially. And I don't have the exact answers, but I think this is really the pressing issue. And I think my impressions from being in lots of meetings and different organizations and so on is that there is a lot of talk, there is a lot of action. It's hard to know if that's going to translate quickly into real investments, but I think the hope that it is going to start to happen. We're going to start to see cities receive more and more financing, particularly around adaptation, but that adaptation will be tightly connected to mitigation, I think.
Thank you, Kes. Then we have an interesting question. I think it's from Africa. Is what are the driving forces to meet the fully recovery by 2050? And also an individual question is about what about the rural areas? How can they become, you know, a little town in a rural area somewhere in a little country? How they can become carbon neutral? So if you can maybe pack these two ones, and then we have additional comments that they refer to the need to develop clear methodologies to become carbon neutral, also the need to change the mindset, and also maybe include the inspiration and spirituality concepts there, also the role of religion in changing our minds. And also Sarah asked questions about the green jobs and, you know, about the creation of green jobs related to climate neutrality. And some of the partners have been giving some examples on that. So maybe if you can take, you know, this second round in a pack. Thank you.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the question from Africa around biodiversity loss and the goal around nature, I mean, I think that there's a realization that we're destroying the biodiversity on the planet at a rapid rate, which is disastrous from any kind of perspective you choose, from a humanity perspective, from a financial perspective, from a philosophical perspective. So we know that we must, start to reverse this trend. I mean, this is agreed on across the world. The problem, of course, is that we have all these activities, all these economic and industrial activities, which are the reasons why we're losing biodiversity. So we need to somehow shift those activities so that we're not seeing a destruction of our biodiversity. We do, of course, see a bending of the curve a little bit. We certainly have a lot of regulations and a lot of activity in this space, but it really is now to, again, tip this needle and to go from kind of a negative situation into going towards a positive scenario. And here cities play a key role. And I think that the key role here is around nature-based solutions and reintroducing nature into cities in a big way. This is already happening in cities around the world, particularly cities that are facing significant heat. For example, a city like Melbourne, where I'm from, where basically the city is just getting hotter and hotter, and they need to introduce more trees, a canopy to cool the city. But that comes with all kinds of benefits for biodiversity. So here you see these kind of co-benefits appearing immediately. So I think that relationship between biodiversity and climate action is actually quite tight and will become tighter. And on the rural question, this also, I mean, our whole thinking around biodiversity requires us to think beyond cities. We certainly can't think of the city boundaries where biodiversity stops, because of course it goes way beyond that. So many cities are being challenged to think in a more metropolitan way, or to think more with kind of other kinds of boundaries like watershed boundaries and so on. So beyond how they typically think with their kind of municipal boundaries. And this again comes with this nature-based solutions thinking that we're starting to move from, let's say, individual nature-based solutions. So let's say a green roof or a green wall, and thinking about how they connect together, and thinking about how the urban and the rural and the coastal connect together. And again, I'm involved in multiple projects around this, and you can see this happening very quickly, this kind of shift towards this more kind of regional thinking rather than just purely urban thinking.
And then I will just go, because we're running a bit late. I will just ask the two last questions, but if you can give a feedback maybe in a couple of minutes. One is, when we talk about resilient environment, how can we link the water supply system with this? And then another question from the city of Larissa is, this person, Maria Nicolaidau, she like the term transformative portfolio, but coordination between planned strategies and projects and actual funding flows can be very challenging, especially since it's usually from many different sources with different focuses. And that usually means that cities need to reshape their projects to be eligible with different funding. So any ideas how to go with this within municipalities? And if you can give a short feedback and then
quickly.
Pass on to
the water and resilience, they're totally connected. In fact, water, and let's say food, but water is the first of the areas where we'll start to see that we have a crisis. When you start to run out of fresh water, you have a real issue. So resilience around water is so tightly connected. Again, I come from a country, Australia, where water is very valuable, very scarce, super important. And so there's a lot of thinking around how we use water, how we capture water, how we make resilient cities, and this whole idea of introducing nature to cities, how we're going to have water for those cities. So there's a very tight connection there between resilience work and water systems, I would say. And again, it's increasing all over the world because water, food, energy, these are the three things you have to have if you're going to have a functioning city or society. If you don't have those, you're going to have a big problem. And then just on the coordinated action, absolutely. What we see in a lot of cities is what we call projectification. Just too many projects that are funded with small amounts of funding and not enough of this kind of long-term funding. So the very simple answer is more long-term funding. How we do that, that's the more difficult question. But essentially, we can't have so many small projects that are not linked together.
Okay. Many thanks, Kes. And I mean, we could read all the questions and comments because they're very interesting. There are also references to the need to link data to our daily work, also the need to do more partnerships in research with all and new science, the need for a mindset change, and a lot of suggestions. So I would just close here if I may.
I can say one more point just to say, my details were on that slide. If anyone wants to follow up with me, I'm more than happy to have conversations outside of this course and beyond this course, just to say that. So thank you again for the time. I'm going to hang around and listen to the rest of most of today.
Okay, so many thanks for this, Kes. And now I'm delighted to also welcome the mayor of Heidelberg. And the reason why we put him under your presentation is because Heidelberg is a very challenging city, you know, in the way to carbon neutrality. So that's why we thought it was a perfect link. So I would like to give the floor to Mayor Brutnes from Heidelberg. So you have the floor. So he will be reacting to you and also presenting his case study of the city of Heidelberg. And then we'll also have a few minutes for questions and answers. So Mayor, you have the floor.
Many thanks. If just a small introduction of my person, if I just ask you to put on the slides, just to give you an idea about Heidelberg and me as the mayor of the city of Heidelberg. I have started in Heidelberg as an environmental advisor of the mayor, and now I'm 18 years mayor of this wonderful city. So from the environment policy to the implementation on the political side, I think this is quite interesting. I worked 25 years ago for the Center for Clean Air Policy in the United States about the clean air policy strategy of American cities, writing a handbook for the OECD about urban energy management. And that's what we have done in Heidelberg. Just go through the slides very quickly because I just have 10 minutes, I think. So a small city, 160,000 inhabitants, but what's very special is nearly 70% of all jobs are created by university, by institutes, international institutes, leading institutes in the field of science. So we are the city, as I always told, next slide please, of Nobel Prize winners. As you can see, what we have already achieved, 80% of all the rides in downtown are done by bicycle or by pedestrian, not by car, 80%. This is a huge topic already. We wanted to become climate neutral. Of course, this is our way. Next slide, please. And we wanted to come from 12 tons to 5 tons per capita. We had already a long way from Rio to today's activity. We were awarded as European Sustainable City Awards already 2003 and going on and going on. And we decided to implement as much as possible long-term climate neutral strategy by a huge engagement of citizens into our city's policy. I think this was one of the main steps to overcome the barriers later on. So as much as possible, city awareness and city engagement programs. Next slide, please. If you do so, you also have to work on the international level. So with the C40s, with UCLG, with Climate Alliance, with ICLA, and all those partners who helps us to understand where is a good way for your city. Next slide, please. And by doing so, we decided to define us as a city, first of all, as a best practice example. So we wanted to become climate neutral in the year 2030 by all our municipal buildings, all our energy demand, the traffic fleet, everything. And we will reach this goal. The total city, we will become climate neutral in 2040 because it's not so easy to get everybody on board, especially the industry. And also the balance system is a little bit tricky because if you're thinking about, for example, a huge furniture company like IKEA, they just buy green green electricity from a huge water power plant, and then the whole production line is green. This is not possible for a city. So our balance is always based on what we really have implemented in our territory, not just buying green. Next slide, please. By doing so, we had a huge agenda for becoming climate neutral, and the way is very strict. What we have achieved over the years is if you go into the city council every second year and have a political debate about your targets and your achievements, it's a heavy political mission, because if you're not achieving your targets, you will kick out of the business as a political person like a mayor. So there is a strong commitment of the citizens. Yes, we wanted to that you follow our target. Next slide, please. And doing so, you see how huge the field of activity is in a city. The energy efficiency programs, the climate neutral transportation, the education programs in schools, city planning, and then also the adaptation plan. So it's really a strategy which you need. Therefore, I always mention, if you don't have a strategy and don't have a clear target to your departments and what everybody has to do, including the financial plan, you will never reach your targets. Next slide, please. By doing so, we create, for example, the whole downtown area is now served with long distance heating, no chimneys anymore. We have super projects like heat storage tanks, like you can see this on the picture, which can store heat for over a weekend, which is needed to buffer the high peak of the energy demand. And by implementation of this plan, you need really a billion program. And we have already set up this program for the whole downtown area. Next slide, please. Also, next slide. Also in the field of solar, here you can see the figure. It is heavy to implement solar if you don't use green fields or agriculture areas. It's heavy because you have to empower all the roofs to tackle with the problem of static problems and other things. So it's not easy to implement this on industrial areas, components, and landfills, for example. But we have achieved it by a special city-owned subsidy program. Next slide, please. Also using wind maps, where can you use wind power plants, where can you use solar plants in agriculture area, have a huge political debate with the citizens, because lots of citizens don't like wind power plants in front of their house, maybe anywhere else, but not in front of their houses. So it's a big discussion. But if you have this in an open discussion, you get the acceptance of the citizen. Next slide, please. And to give you an idea, what a city has, what's a city needed, for example, you keep in mind a city of nearly 200,000 inhabitants need about 100, we need about 77, 100 wind turbines, newest generation, or 1,000 soccer fields of solar. This is huge to serve them with carbon neutral energy. But we're going in this direction very heavily, and we try to achieve this goal. Next slide. Also, new developing zones. We built since 15 years only climate neutral city areas. This is in Europe, I would say, the biggest climate neutral city which is built. Today, not 2 billion investment has done, it's about more than 4 already. Nearly 10,000 people are living there, 6,000 new jobs, and it's 100% climate neutral city because these buildings are all super efficient. You can see this in the picture on the right side. Normally, a house has about 1.9 liter. No, as you can say, yeah, you have about 1.9 energy demand for a building, and ours needs 0.1 kilowatt hour per square meter in a year. This is really a super efficient building. And all of these buildings are built in this direction. Why? City has become the whole city owner, and we are only selling these areas if the construction companies are accepting our huge climate neutral energy standard. So becoming a landlord means you can decide what you want, and you're free, and you're out of the national target, which is much lower or much inefficient than our standards in Heidelberg. Next slide, please. And also with the bus fleet, we started with electric buses, and now we changed the electric buses into hydrogen buses, also electric based, but with a hydrogen engine, which is much more efficient if you have hill areas. And we decided to become climate neutral by such a program, but we have also the money to pay for this. And the interesting thing is the whole bus fleet is owned by the city. All the tram tracks are owned by the city company. So we have an own city company who is doing this service, so we can politically decide easily to transfer this company into a climate neutral company. Next slide, please. Using bikes, as I mentioned, 80% of all the mobility in downtown is using bikes, pedestrian, or going by buses. And this is super environmental friendly. The problem for us are the commuters to downtown from outside the city, which are not coming all by train. This is the next program. We are working on it. Next slide. We're also integrating companies. We have contracts with more than 100 companies, supporting them with energy audience and with subsidy programs to become climate neutral. This is what they want. And we're very open-minded to get this support from the city, and we're very happy to be awarded if they go in the same direction like the city. Next slide. And then you have the whole program of climate adaptation. Maybe next slide is a little bit better seen, where we have flood risk. Heidelberg is laying on a very wonderful, nice river, but we have lots of floods. So we need a flood risk management, a heavy rain risk management, technical planning concepts. That's what we have all done in the field of climate adaptation, which is also a huge program. To come to the end, I must say, here's the flood scenery. I think we can stop here if how high the flood is in the different periods of the year. But what we have achieved, I think, in general, is that we have empowered the city to become climate neutral. Why? We are now owning our own energy company, producing our own energy. We're owning the whole traffic fleet. We are owning all the new planning areas where we build new houses by the city, so becoming a landlord. And by running also the climate adaptation plans, where a flood can be, where is the heat too high, where we have to work with greening. This has all to do with adaptation to get a more climate resilient strategy. But the biggest point, in my opinion, is empower cities to become owner of these so relevant units like energy, traffic, and land. I think if you're owner of this, if you're owner of your water resources, and not Nestle, for example, then you can really set up a strategy which can be climate neutral. This is, of course, in a very short version, my idea. The last point which I wanted to mention is maybe it can be a very good idea, because we are also one of these 100 climate neutral European cities, that the European Commission should think about a climate neutral innovation award. Maybe each of the 100 cities should concentrate on one super excellent project, and we can disseminate and also finance these super excellent innovation projects in these 100 cities to give those cities a better awareness, international awareness, and to exchange the experience we make in a better way. So many thanks for your attention. I'm waiting for your questions. Many thank you.
Okay, vielen Dank, Mayor. It was extremely interesting. As a reminder to all participants, all the presentations from yesterday and today are already in the link. I have put it in the chat, and you can find all the links to everything in the agenda document. So get lost, go to the agenda, and they're all there. So we have 3 questions for the moment. I'll go for the first one. I think it's from Greece. Is, do you connect your efforts to achieve neutrality with continuous information and interaction with your citizens in order to point out the benefits of this procedure? Maybe you can respond to this quickly, and then I'll move to the next 2 ones.
Yes, of course, this is very important. Every second year, we have a huge report, also in the newspaper, in the City Council. We discuss our targets, we discuss our results, what we have achieved. This political discussion is always very important to keep the flame burning, as I always say, to become climate neutral.
Thank you. Then we have another one, the efforts to neutral carbon cities. We have heard about carbon tax. How about climate incentive? I think this comes from Africa.
We have the lucky situation, for example. I'm the owner of the cash machine of a city. What is a cash machine? A cash machine is something where you earn a lot of money. And what's it? It's the energy company. The energy company owns mostly the highest number of money. So if you become owner of the energy company, you can subsidize a lot of energy climate neutral projects. If you're not the owner of the energy company, you lost this windows of opportunity. So all our subsidy programs are financed by the high income of the energy company in also the climate neutral fields. So we're serving with good energy concepts, but we're earning also money in creating, therefore, our own investment program.
Okay, thank you. Wow. Another question is, it seems that the city has many initiatives complementing each other towards climate neutrality. It seems that you have a high investment, green investment. Could you give us an idea of the percentage local, national? Maybe Sarah, you can ask the question because it's not clear in the chat.
Yeah, I think the investment is always a little bit. It's a little bit critical to have a number, yeah. But you have to think or keep in mind that first of all, you have to be able to create your own investment programs. For example, only for the subsidy of heat in downtown area, we call it the long distance heating network, because heat in winter is in our region very the highest CO2 relevant factor. And we changed this by setting up new power plants based on green energy in Heidelberg. So we had about an investment of about, I would say, 200 million euro in 5 years. And we need about 2 billion euro in the next 10 years. This is such a high number that we have no idea how we can finance this. Therefore, we need also European money. But the biggest problem is you have to bring those pipes into the street. Also the electricity. If you electrify a city, your low voltage system is not ready. So if you have 5 Tesla, for example, or 5 electric cars in one street, they blow the electricity grid. So what you have to do is a huge investment in new streets. You have to dig out all those old pipes, bring in the new pipes, and this creates a city of, how you can say this, it's a whole chaos if you have to do this in the whole city, which is already built. For a new city, it's easy. For an existing city, it's a huge target. And we decided to change about 15 kilometers a year, maybe 20, that more is not acceptable to keep the existing mobility existing. Otherwise, you have a huge problem in your downtown city, logistic.
Okay, I will just ask you the last 2 questions because, you know, we could be here for the whole afternoon because you are only getting comments, very positive comments and very challenging. So another one is, how can you measure the effect and change that happen due to this huge effort? That's one.
I think, yeah, we have set up a huge team. So the first relevant thing is that you need experts in your city in many areas. You need a heat expert, you need electricity experts, you need them in your city. Otherwise, you're depending on private ideas, which you can't control. Also, using a lot of private investments, what we have done means we are writing the energy contracts. We are not accepting any energy contract from a private company. We are writing the energy contract. The private company is accepting our energy contract, but it's based on a reduction of the kilowatt hour, not just on an energy price. So it gets very complicated if you go in these fields. So you need an expert team in your city. And this means for my city about I think I have 15 experts just in the environment and the energy sector, run all those programs, which are now under the CO2 reduction program. For bigger city, it's much more. So you have to use this potential.
Okay, and just one very last one is about the encouraging planting trees as a mean of carbon neutrality in the urban cities. Have you developed something around that? And then that will be the last question, and then I will give the floor. Not about the if you have developed or encouraged the planting trees as a means to achieve climate neutrality in the urban city. In your case.
Yeah, planting trees is nice. I think it's very relevant, but it takes very long. Half of our city area is forest, and I'm fighting to keep the forest alive, which is not easy because of drought periods now. Also in our area, we're thinking about which plants are better, which we have to plant, but keep forests alive. I think this is at the moment the biggest targets. Don't destroy them and try to plant 2-3 new trees. Try to create the forest areas, which are not mostly in your areas. We have those cooperations with the Amazonas. We have a huge area which is owned by the city, where we try to keep or support the indigenous people living there in their forest.
Brilliant. Many thanks, Mayor. And then I will just give the floor to Kes in case he wants to react very quickly on the Mayor's presentation. Kes, would you like to react quickly?
I just say it's a fantastic presentation. I think they're certainly leading from the front on a whole range of areas, and it's fantastic to see. And I think that he also raised the challenges that are facing cities. So I think it's and I think this point of kind of learning from each other and getting inspiration from each other. We don't need to kind of replicate exactly what we're doing, but we can learn so much from just listening to different cities and different activities. So great presentation. I'm glad I was here to hear it.
Okay, thank you very much, Kes and Mayor. So again, the presentations are online already. Please take a look at that and do not hesitate to ask individual questions that we can address maybe at a later stage. Okay, and then because I know that the Mayor needs to go, we're gonna take a group picture. So please, everyone, I want your big smiles. And then my colleagues will take a picture because we took another one yesterday, but some of you were not there yesterday. So I'll give you 30 seconds. No, that's too much. I'll give you 10 seconds to put your cameras on, okay? And then I'll count out to 3. 1, 2, and 3. Another one because we've got 4 pages of participants. So 1, 2, 3. And the last one, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so many thanks to everyone. And Mayor, I know that you need to leave, so many thanks for participating. And for the ones who can stay online, I'll give the floor to my colleague from UCLG because we're going to do a Mentimeter exercise. It was also very interesting yesterday, so we're going to do something similar. So I'll give the floor to Juan Carlos and he can explain us how we're going to run this. We will run this for a few minutes and then we'll have a short coffee break, virtual coffee break. So Juanca, you have the floor, please.
Thank you very much, Eva, and thank you, Kes and Mayor Heidelberg for your presentations. It was also very interesting to see how you were both touching at mitigation and adaptation aspects. And I know that in the second half of today, we're going to be focusing on a lot of examples on mitigation. So before we did that, we wanted to bring back the hazards that were identified by you yesterday and do an exercise on adaptation issues, particularly looking at preparedness and response, which sometimes when we start talking about climate, it goes more into strategic planning, energy, and we tend to forget about, but it's also good to bring those stakeholders that are involved in that preparedness and response into the whole conversation. So for that, we will use again Mentimeter for those of you who were yesterday. But first, I'm going to share one slide that is coming from your responses yesterday before I give the instructions of the exercise. So yesterday we were asking you what were the main hazards that your city was exposed to in the last 5 years, and it was very clear that floods, heat, and drought were kind of one of the key ones. Drought just coming up a little bit, but with flooding and heat waves coming up a lot. And when we look into the next 10 years, like in 10 years, which ones would it be the biggest ones? Actually, well, flooding and heat continue to be a concern for many cities, but water shortage also increased quite a much. So it's also interesting to see how that is already a reality for many cities, and they're starting to look at it. But for today's exercise, we're going to be looking at those two big ones, floods and heat waves in particular. And it was good that we had examples from Heidelberg already of what a plan on floods and a plan on heat waves might look like, because a little bit of what we're going to do here is try to think individually, but then also exchange ideas on what are the steps that are necessary for that, and think from that who needs to be involved in those processes. So this is an interactive exercise. So I need you to get your phones or like in your internet browser, go to menti.com and enter the code that you see in the screen. You can also scan the QR code if it's easier for you. And the code is 7826816. So again, you go to menti.com in your phone or any browser that you have in your computer as well, and use this code 7826816. I'm gonna wait a little bit for you to log in. You can also do it from your computer if it's easier. Okay, I see we already hiring more people. So let's go to the first question, because today we're using a format that is a little bit harder to understand. So this is a sample question so that you understand how you can answer the actual exercise. So the idea, you will be seeing different actions in your phone or in your browser, and you will have to organize them from the first steps to the last steps before submitting your answer. So this is an exercise before we go into the actual questions. So we have here 4 different actions. Which ones do you think, in which order do you think this would be taken? Okay, so yeah, I think we're still waiting for answers, but this will move and change according to how you prioritize them. So let's wait a few moments until we have more answers. And again, like I had thought of a different order for this, so like this will change on your understanding of those words, and it's part of the exercise when we go into the actual questions. So we have here, see something, understand what is happening. I see that's changing while we receive the answers. Then you reflect on past experiences, and then you take action. So yeah, very interesting. This is a sample, and I'm glad to see that more people are answering. So this is what we're gonna do in the next 2 questions. The first one, we're gonna be looking at floods, and what you will see is the impact of a flood hitting, and you will see 6 different actions, and you have to organize them in the order that you think those actions need to be taken. Now, that doesn't mean that all of them have to be taken after the flood hits. Some of them might be taken before. So you can also move the flood hazard impact down the order and like put some of the actions before and one of the actions after. So let's try this. We usually do this in groups. This is part of one of a game that we designed as part of the resilience learning modules. So it's more of a discussion in group, but because we didn't have much time, we're doing it with this Mentimeter format. So take your time, look at the different options that you have there. And in the case of a flood, please organize the actions that you see in your screen, knowing that you can move the hazard impact down the order. Meanwhile, I'm just going to read some of the actions that we have here while you think of it, but I know it will take some time to get some answers first. So we have as possible actions, establishing governing bodies and competences, securing food storage and supplies, disaster recovery planning, risk assessment, providing financial support, and asking for external help. So let's see, we're still only at 5 responses, so it takes a few more seconds to reply. And I would like to hear from people who haven't spoken yet. So if anyone is willing to break the ice and raise their hand if you have already answered, and share a little bit of why you select the order that you did, and how is it different than what you see in the screen, that would be great. I don't know if anyone is brave enough to raise their virtual hand. See, we have 15, so still a few people are thinking about it. No one. Okay, but I see here, I'm gonna speak a little bit well, otherwise I'm gonna call on some of the people that I see to comment on this if no one is brave enough to volunteer. But yeah, we see here risk assessment coming up, establishing governing body and competences as a second step, disaster recovery planning coming before the impact actually hits, which is always an interesting and a discussion that we often have. Food storage and supplies after the hazard, asking for external help, and providing financial support. So I don't know if you have any different opinions here, or you saw that something should have been taken before or after. If any colleagues from European cities are willing to take the floor.
And maybe also if this is an ideal world, or if the reality is like this, that you all have assessments and governing bodies.
I don't know if colleagues from Portugal, Greece, Belgium. I don't want to name names, but if you help me raising your hand, that would be great. Susanna, please go ahead.
Just because Juan asked. Hello, everyone. I'm Susanna from Matosinhos, Portugal. And regarding this subjects, floods, yes, we have here in Portugal, not only in Matosinhos, but in Portugal, everything prepared until the hazard impacts. We have risk assessment for floods. We have already established this governing competences and the different stockholders that are involved in this kind of disaster. We also have a disaster recovery plan. We have a master plan for our civil protection that includes all risks, and flood is one of them. We also do the hazard impacts of the floods in our master plan for the city planning. So every area there is a flood area, mainly in rivers and big water courses, are the analysis of the hazard impacts of a flood is in our master planning of our city. So this is one of the risks that we have in our master city plans here in Portugal, because most of the cities have flood impacts. The other topics are more like the things that we have planned, but we don't have already implemented, because we don't have any food storages or supplies, because everything is really near, and we have in our master plan the ways to get this food storage and the supplies that we need if we have a major accident regarding a flood. So until the hazard impact, we have everything work on, and everything is already in planning. And the others are also topics that we have in our planning, but are not implemented because we don't, until today, we didn't have the need to have this implemented.
Thank you very much, Susanna. And yeah, it's interesting to see how, yeah, in your case, that disaster recovery planning is already kind of integrated into the response as well, based on the risk assessments and everything, and the other things will kind of come up based on the impact of this. Let's go now to the second question, to the second hazard, and I will again ask for a volunteer to to talk about this. So this one is, this time we're looking at heat waves, and you'll see different actions in there. And again, you can move the hazard impact down the line if you think there are actions that need to be taken before that. We have, again, here the establishing governing body and competences, multi-sectoral analysis, risk communication and public awareness programs, designing early warning protocols, maintaining active supplies of electricity and telecommunications, and securing the food and health supply chain. So let's give a few seconds for you to move here. And again, if you see something that you think it's definitely missing when it comes to heat waves, or that your city is already doing, please don't hesitate to raise your hand and comment on this. Let's give a few more seconds, because I know it takes time to organize all of the actions before submitting them. An interesting competition between this top three here at the beginning, in regards to what order you think they should be taken. And this is something that when we do it in person, it also comes out of whether the governance elements should be there in place before anything of this is started or can be done parallelly to assessments or analysis being taken. So, but yeah, we see multi-sectoral analysis and the governing bodies and competences coming to the top of the actions. The risk communication and designing early warning protocols, which are closely related to each other, coming after, and then after the hazard impact, other items such as maintaining active supplies and securing the food and health supply chain. And of course, we saw in the city examples how, in terms of heat waves, it's also something that it's increasingly impacting cities, and many of the actions cannot be taken just after a heat wave or when you know a heat wave is coming, but it's already part of the adaptation strategies of cities at a more strategic level, looking at those green spaces, like blue infrastructure as well, and like social spaces that can be used as during heat waves to cool down. I don't know if anyone wants to comment on this. I know we have many European cities that have been working on this, from Greece, France, so it would be great to hear from some of you, especially if you're not talking in the second half of the session. Maria, please go ahead.
Yes, hello, I'm from Larissa, Greece, and our city is one of the Greek cities that have actually a lot of heat waves and increased temperatures in the latest years. So I would like to maybe add something. I don't know if it's included somewhere. It needs to be added. But in Greece, when a heat wave is expected, one of the actions that each city, our city at least, takes is securing spaces, cool places, especially for vulnerable groups like the elderly and people with chronic diseases. So they're available to them in case of in case they don't have an air conditioning or a cool place for them. So I don't know if somewhere is included in there, but maybe it should, taken into consideration. .
。  . 。 。 。 。 。 . 。 。 . 。 。 . 。 。 . 。 。 . 。 。 . 。 。 。 。 。 。 。 。 。 。 。 。
。 . 。 . 。
。 . 。 . 。 . 。
。 .
。 Okay, no, yeah, now I am. No, thank you very much, Maria, and I think that's a key element when it comes to heat waves. And this exercise, actually, most of the actions that you see there are not related to specific hazards, and the idea is to actually kind of bring up some of those, depending on the context of different cities. I don't know if there's anyone else who wants to make a comment on this. If you want, please raise your hand. But kind of we wanted to introduce this a little bit to reflect on what we've been listening from our own realities and our own cities processes, but also because this is one of the exercises that was introduced is included in the resilience learning modules that UCLG has been developing together with UN Habitat, UNDRR, the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, and our different sections. And it's available both as a facilitator's guide and an online course. And it includes different examples from cities all around the world and exercises like this one that can help both when you come together with other cities to exchange the actions that you're doing, but also when you're doing internally procedures within different departments or with citizens to kind of bring those ideas of what is happening. So we wanted to introduce this exercise, but you can learn more about how this exercise can be used in the resilience learning modules that are available in our website. And we will show a little video now during the break also to introduce that. There's also another one on the donut economics, actually, because that you might be interested in, which also connects like economic, cultural, and social policies to and how they can contribute to building this social resilience element. So if you want to look into that, please go ahead. I don't know, Sada, if you can help me putting the link in there while I prepare to show the video. And in the meantime, Eva, you can tell us a little bit more of what's happening after the break. And I'll put the video during the break.
Okay, perfect. Many thanks, Juan Carlos, and thanks everyone for participating into the Mentimeter. All this information will be reflected also in the leader report we'll do afterwards and share with you. So now I suggest we have a 10 minutes break and you come back at 4:32 sharp. Okay. And then in the second block, we will have a session about financial opportunities. We'll have two guests from the European Investment Bank and also from the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. They will present the current work they're doing, also linked to the local level. And then we will also have 3 examples from European associations working with Latin America on the centralized cooperation actions, of course, linked to climate change. And the reason why we have these examples with Latin America is also to make the link to a summit that was hosted and held last year between the European Union and Latin American countries. So that's why we wanted to make the link, and that's why we have these 3 case studies to connect Europe with Latin America. So 10 minutes as from now, okay? And then I believe, Sarah and Juanca, that you will run the video also during this break. I think the video is about 2-3 minutes, okay? So you can watch the video and have a coffee.
Francesco is uploading it.
Yeah. Okay. And then we'll come back. And then we should be finishing by 5:30, so you know it. And sorry, I forgot to mention that we'll also have a session about climate COP preparations at the end as well. So Francesco is going to play. No, it's Juanca.
This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, so welcome back, everybody. And yeah, now, as we announced before, we will look into the sequence of investments and also of cases. So I have the pleasure to moderate a session of 35 minutes only with 5 very interesting contributions. And that's why I will beg your pardon. Now we will have the first contributors will be from the European Reconstruction Bank. So it is Emre Ogunzokul who will be speaking, and then we will have the European Investment Bank with Edward Caltrop. Once they speak, you will understand the difference because they know each other and they speak to each other. And then we will have also 3 examples of projects of decentralized cooperation. So this bridge, of course, we see it's important to do because here we gather a community that also looks into cooperation. So it's not only European members here with us, but from other parts, those engaged. And of course, here it is interesting to reflect how all these financing systems is then in the end also relevant for the work done on cooperation. So I will now ask Emre Ogunsul to get ready to tell us about Green Cities initiatives, about long-term cooperation, and what are investable opportunities and projects the European build a reconstruction bank can fund, and what do you think is successful? So please, Emre, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sarah. It's a pleasure to be here. And thank you very much. I can't see. Oh no, yeah.
Yeah,
Perfect.
that's fine.
Can see it now. Thank you. I'll speak about. I'll briefly introduce our Green Cities program, which is actually the majority of our municipal business in the countries of our operations. If you could move to the next slide, please. The EBRD Green Cities program is our flagship program at EBRD, the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. It's a €5 billion framework, of which we have to date used more than 2.7 billion euro in our countries of operations on various infrastructure projects, and is actually a full-fledged program that has several legs. At the core of this program, we have what we call as Green City Action Plans. These cities are working on Green City Action Plans once they join our network of green cities. And in order to join our Green Cities network, there is certain, thresholds, there are certain criteria for projects, technical criteria, but also we are looking for a minimum of 50,000 population in our cities. The projects that we finance under this program, as you can see on the screen, are from various sectors. Historically, 40 to 50% of our projects since 2016, when we established the program, has been in the urban transport sector. So we finance a lot of metro projects, electric bus projects. There's a couple of EV charging infrastructure projects quite lately, actually, in the countries of operations, and I'll come to that in the next slide. But just to continue on the sectors, thank you. Then we have water and wastewater sector, which makes it 10-15% of the projects. Again, historically, there are no limits on these sectors. Something similar in district energy, buildings, green buildings, solid waste. We also financed a good number of electricity distribution network projects, several renewable energy projects, as well as climate resilience investments in the cities. Within the program, it's not only the development of the Green City Action Plan and financing projects, but we're also supporting our cities with capacity building. We have a good number of stakeholder engagement workshops during the development process of the GCAPs, the Green City Action Plans, but also we keep a network of these cities. So once a city joins, for us, it's permanently a member of our Green Cities network, and we have periodical meetings on certain themes. And lastly, we're supporting our cities to access green finance, and that's quite important because it's the idea of having a Green City Action Plan is not for EBRD to finance, but rather we would very much like other financiers. This could be
Sorry, Emre,
Emre,
you have been muted.
You are muted.
By...
Sorry, is it back now?
Now it's good.
Yes.
Okay, apologies.
No,
I was just
it was my mistake, I think. My apologies.
That's okay. Thank you. We are supporting our cities to access green finance, and we're working with our partners, donors, in order to enable some concessional loans and grants where possible for such projects. If you could move to next slide, please. This map shows the this is the map of our green cities. Apologies, I think the letters are not quite right, but we have 60 cities as of now in our network. Our countries of operations, the range is from Morocco in the west to Mongolia in the east. We're working in 38 economies, 38 countries, and again, 60 cities. So to date, 36 cities have completed their Green City Action Plans. You could find these action plans on our website, ebrdgreencities.com, and we're working with those cities that you see with orange dots. Those are the cities that we're actually working together with our consultants to develop the Green City Action Plans. Next slide, please. So how it works is we first of all need a trigger investment, and this is given that EBRD is a bank primarily. We're really interested in realizing these these actions in the action plan. But even before that, we require an investment that EBRD finances in these cities that can act as a trigger for the development of the Green City Action Plan. Once the trigger investment is there, we usually sign a memorandum of understanding with the city to initiate the development of the Green City Action Plan, which takes about a year. We assess, I mean, it's actually twofold. I mean, the process, the first 6 months is baseline assessment, whereas the second 6 months is action development. And then the idea is, of course, to support the city with implementing those actions. GCAPs have roughly a 5-year timeline, and we are now working towards it's relatively a new program. It's been only 8 years. We're now working with select cities to update their Green City Action Plans. So it's, as I said, it's a dynamic program, living program. Once a city joins the network, we're really supporting them to implement as many actions as possible, and we're also looking forward to our partners, other MDBs, other financiers, to support these actions as well. Below you can see an example in Sarajevo in Bosnia and Herzegovina. In 2017, we signed a project. There was a transaction on the water supply network, and it was then followed by the development and the completion of the Sarajevo Green City Action Plan, which was adopted by the City Council in 2021. And after that, we were able to support the city with the realization of 6 different projects in various sectors, most of them in transport, obviously, as you can see, but also there was a buildings project. We're still in talks with the city, and but also with private companies in the city to implement certain other actions. Next slide, please. So this is just an example of certain actions from various GCAPs. To give a couple of examples, in Tirana, one of the actions aims having a forest that orbits the city center. In Izmir, we have looked into scaling up public transport. This is actually a project that we financed early last year. In Amman, we're looking at buildings projects, school buildings projects that are owned by the city. In Ulaanbaatar, we have various projects from building sector, from solid waste sector. So these are we're targeting mainly municipal infrastructure
I have
sectors.
to remind you on time, sorry.
No, this is the end of my presentation.
Oh, thank you very much. No, thank you very much, Emre. This was very insightful. I hope you will stay with us here because we come back. This is, of course, extremely relevant. And I think there are many questions of what kind of cities can apply, why, what are the criteria. And of course, we also will look into the cooperation projects that move in this policy, transport policy, and so on. You will see. But first, now I would like to give the floor to our second speaker of the European Investment Bank. So it is Mr. Edward Kaltrop, and he will give us also an insight of the financial opportunities for the local level and the related climate challenges you think to address. Edward, the floor is yours.
Sarah, thank you very much. I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Great. Okay. Look, well, I mean, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak today to such a distinguished audience, and really enjoyed actually listening into the earlier session this afternoon. So look, I'm working for the EIB. I think in a very similar type of organization, really, to the EBRD, to Emre's that Emre just presented. Maybe we flip to the next slide if we can. You know, I think first of all, let me compliment Emre actually on the EBRD's green climate, green city program. I think is fantastic. It's really delivering good results. We're providing something very similar types of services in working with cities on advisory, capacity building, and complementing that with finance. What I thought I'd do today, I thought I'd just try to pick up on a couple of points, I think maybe to just kind of kick on the conversation. And if I may, probably moving to the next slide. I thought I wanted to make 3 points really fast because Sarah, we have to keep to the time. So I'll try to be succinct. I mean, one is picking up on the point around developing plans. And I mean, Professor McCormick made the point earlier that 70% of cities still don't have, a robust overview of their investment needs in both the mitigation and the adaptation space. So there's a lot of work ongoing on developing robust plans. One point I wanted to just flag today, because I think it's something that we're spending quite a bit of time on at EIB at the moment, and that's really on the resilience side, on the adaptation space. So cities, obviously, you're working very hard to look at your capital investment needs to prepare your city for a changing climate. You're needing a climate risk resilience for CRVA, climate risk vulnerability assessment. And this is a pretty new field. So, I think what we're seeing is a lot of questions now, both from the financing community, but also within the industry more broadly. What does it mean to have a good plan? What does it mean to have good forecasts, robust forecasts, long-term, granular climate modeling? Have you looked at a range of climate scenarios? All of this is very much a moving field. And I was listening to the mayor from Heidelberg talking about the need for expertise within cities, and I fully agree with that. I mean, I think the point is organizations like ours can come and offer support, TA support, to help with that. And something that at EIB that we're doing at the moment, just to flag it, is really working with Copernicus, so with the EU Earth observation component of the EU space program, to try to make sure we have good, so that's a conversation we can have with you on the basis of those types of modeling exercises. So plans matter, and on the adaptation space, the resilience, that's a really fast moving field on getting good forecasts. Once you've got a plan, obviously that needs to then be confronted with the reality of your funding model. How are you going to finance this thing, right? And again, I was listening earlier, I think Professor McCormick made the point for us on that space is that the limitations facing cities are probably getting more constrained, not less constrained. Yes, hopefully you get access to grants, certainly in the EU space, or national grants, EU grants. That's very important for a lot of this. Yes, hopefully organizations like mine or the EBRD can support you drive down your cost of capital and help get a little bit of extra buck for your balance sheet. And yes, you're going to have to prioritize, and I'm always acutely conscious when talking to actual cities of how difficult and how real those choices are. But what I wanted to stress for today is really the third point, which is okay, how can you get more out of your balance sheet? And I think two very quick messages. I mean, one is on the energy efficiency space. I'm sure some people on the call have far more experience on this than me, but what we've worked for a number of years is to try to get energy performance contracting to work. So what does that mean? That means private sector comes in, makes the investment for deep renovation in, let's say, your public buildings, and they will be paid back through future energy savings, shared between yourselves and them. Sounds simple, really difficult to do in practice. Needs quite a lot of care to get the procurement right, particular. As a city, you're going to now need to write investment grade contracts. That needs some thought and some preparation. But I have that for the next slide. I think is a nice example where we're seeing this work. And this is a case where through our ELENA program, we've worked for a number of years back now with essentially the Salento Peninsula in Italy, where through a sort of extensive TA arrangement there of 1.5 million, that's led to 44 million of investment in, as I say, deep renovation in buildings and in street lighting. So that can be done, and I think that's something that we're certainly keen to work with municipalities to see, where the ELENA program is really there to help you, to work with you on that. My final point, Sarah, and then I promise to stop. The interesting one, and I think I throw this out there, and I'm really interested to talk to anybody who's involved in it, is can we do something similar on the adaptation side? I.e., is there a way of, if you're going to invest now, you're going to invest CapEx today, and you're going to reduce future damages to your city, is there a way of capturing that future flow of avoided damages and using that to incentivize investment today in CapEx? There's a lot of talk around Vancouver, and those of you made that, there's models out there, and I think we would certainly be very keen to talk to any of you who are thinking and working in this space to see if we can try to make something work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Edward. I personally have to say I love your last question, because we are actually looking into the scenario thinking and modeling, and not from the financial perspective, but of course it ends in finance. In the end, we need to calculate the losses, a loss of life, how do you express this, and all the losses. And it is very, today we have thanks to the digital data everywhere available now, we have very different opportunities than before to forecast and to build scenarios. And of course, this capacity is very appreciated. And we always listen to the question, and okay, how do we build financial scenarios so that we can also access to do more adaptation because we know what we are exposed to. This is why also here in this academy, we talk about climate change, but we combine it with risk because that's where the financial stress is most felt, no? When we talk about how do a hazard hit us. And so I think it is a lot of food for thought, but I do not want to do bilateral because we have our other speakers. So the three cases are for decentralized cooperation, and we have of every level. Yesterday, you remember we talk about government, local government, national government, stakeholders. So now we have selected three practices. The first one is a project between associations, so local government association, in particular the Dutch, Netherlands, VNG, and the Costa Rica Association. And then we have two cities and through two regions cooperating. So I would like to ask you who are now presenting, Claudia and David, you start. Please make the points, because we see you for example, you start with Mueve. Let us know what you're doing very quick, but then let's come to this the capacity need, which was addressed, I think, by Emre and Edward. How do your project also results in capacity so that access to finance and the planning can be really implemented? Please, floor is yours for 5 minutes. Two speakers, David and Claudia. Claudia, will you start? I saw Claudia de Laaf in the room.
Does the microphone not work?
Yeah, you are there. Now we hear you.
The microphone
Go
working?
ahead. Yes,
okay,
it's okay.
Perfect. Thank you, Sarah. I will just briefly introduce the project, and then my local colleague David will dive into the content. So we are going to present on the project Mueve, which is a transit-oriented urban development project in 15 municipalities of the metropolitan area of San Jose in Costa Rica. It's a 5-year partnership project between Costa Rican and European local authorities. It's been running for 4 years already, and it basically has a SDG approach to the subject of mobility, balancing both social, economic, and physical sustainability. It's a consortium existing out of the UNGL, the Costa Rican Association of Municipalities, VNG, the Dutch Association of Municipalities, and our partner in Spain, the city of San Sebastian. So David, take it away, dive into the content, and let us learn about what the project has done in the last 4 years. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Claudia. And so Mueve builds upon municipal teams that have been developed in order to strengthen their skills, development skills, networking, and piloting innovations. And that leads toward the goal precisely of installing capacities and leaving local teams equipped with what they need in order to follow up on their projects and make a deeper impact. The project has a regional transit-oriented development plan that is basically a bird's eye view of intermunicipal opportunities to catalyze local governance and regional development. This involves all 15 municipalities, and it is developed by external consultants. And it's been finished this year. We also have project plans, 15 midterm plans for 15 local governments to strengthen their work towards sustainable mobility schemes. They have as I was saying before, a route plan to follow as far as implementing different interventions that have been identified as part of the work of the regional TOD plan as priority in order to connect people both walking, cycling, and using local public transit with mass transit, which in this case is the metropolitan train. We're also piloting projects that have that demonstrate the impact of project plans. So these are 15 public space interventions to demonstrate the viability and efficacy of sustainable mobility tools that we are working with in municipal teams. And finally, we have a TOD lab that is a space that we have a monthly space of all municipal teams to get together and share ideas, learning opportunities, and of course encourage citizen engagement, which with citizen visits and their participatory processes being shared in the common table, and of course staying up to date with the latest trends in mobility, which is very trendy and very changing. If we can go to the next slide, please, very quickly. We have a very brief example of networking with municipal teams and also other institutions, central government, and of course, everything around the local metropolitan train. Next slide, please. We also have, as I was saying, interventions in the field with tactical urbanism that gets together both, municipal personnel and also neighbors and schools. And we've done lots of things with children and lots of different populations within territories. Next slide, please. Everything has to do with planning and, of course, leaving plans for municipal teams to follow up on and continue development is the goal. So if you can just click and see how this changes to the next slide, please. That sort of planning is, of course, the result of participatory, engagement, people telling us what their needs are. And of course, our technical teams also identifying things like climate challenges, things that need to be addressed. And if you can go to the next slide, please. In order to have climate resilience that is in many ways expressed, and one of them is, of course, providing green spaces and improving and amplifying the space that is dedicated to trees and greenery, and also smart drainage for rain catchment and other treatments of rainwater. That is a little bit of what we're doing in Mueve, and we're very happy to share with you. And any questions you might have, we're here to listen as well.
Thank you very much, David and Claudia, also for keeping on time. The project is very interesting. And of course, now maybe you can think about and also how linking it with finance. I mean, we have seen now you have a lot of tactical solutions, probably financed locally, but of course, the transport, I don't know if any reconstruction bank is into it, but then maybe in the chat we can start linking it to the presentations of Emre and Edward. So now we go to our next speakers. So we have Belgium, and I don't know if you will have slides as well. Yeah, it is already on the so okay, Guaranda is presenting in Ecuador. Go ahead, please. Who will be presenting for Guaranda?
Hilda.
Hello, good morning or good afternoon.
Yes, Hilda.
Yeah, okay. Good morning or good afternoon in each country. My name is Hilda Rochina. I am a technician from the municipality of Guaranda, from the environmental management area, and I am working with sustainable use and management of water. Also, the context. This project is located in Bolívar province, municipality of Guaranda. In Ecuador, the 90% of child chronic malnutrition is due to the lack of access to clean water. This is mainly caused by the advancement of the agricultural frontier and by the livestock activities. According to the last census of child malnutrition, the province of Bolívar, and especially Guaranda, is ranked second of Ecuador with high rate of chronic child malnutrition, 30.3%. Next, please. Sustainable Use and Water Management Project UNSA. The municipality of Guaranda, Ecuador, in cooperation with the municipality of Evergen, Belgium, has been executing the project UNSA in its first phase from 2017 to 2021, and currently a new cooperation agreement has been signed that runs from 2022-2026. The main objective for this project, implementing policies of the water integral management that contribute to the protection of natural resources and permit access to safe water and sustainable agriculture. Next, please. Each year, intervention is carried out in a specific area, approximately 8 to 12 communities. How have their areas to intervene been determined? Based on diagnosis of drinking water system carried out from the UNSA project, based on 2022, in which Facundo Vela, San Luis de Panville was determined of priority areas of interventions. The main actions for this UNSA project are the following actions. For example, provision of water mixture, chlorination system, biochemical or microbiological analysis of water, the native plants sowing. For this year, implementing the eco-hydrological solutions to the contaminated water springs. All these actions are carried out with the participation of the community. For example, in the enclosure of water springs is carried out in Minga. For example, all men and women work. And the same way in the planting of plants. This is very important because this way community excitement unity.
Hilda, could you conclude?
Next, please.
You would need to conclude.
The community's excitement unity. Yeah,
No,
yeah.
Digo que tiene que concluir por el tiempo.
Todavía tengo tiempo.
No, un minuto.
Okay, yeah.
So.
In this year, it's now activity by law to the protect different ecosystem, paramount forests and mountains where, yeah, and the strategic partners, the cantonal technical community of water for the articulate with some institutions, public institutions and ONGs. Next. Yeah, the sustainable use of water management project use. The municipality of Guaranda, Ecuador, in cooperation with the municipality of Evergen, Belgium, has been executing the project UNSA. In this first phase, excuse me. As you can see, we have intervened in 8 districts of Guaranda, a total of 63 rural communities in the canton, benefiting 4,713 families, with the support that we have mentioned previously, such as protection of water springs, planting of native plants, water disinfection provisions of measures. Next, main changes Of the changes is the conservations and protections of ecosystems. The solution is not only to decontaminate the water, but the ensure water for present and future generations. The main changes for this year is to carry out the bylaw and start with specific actions to preserve and protect the water springs.
Thank you very much, Hilda. And sorry, I have to rush you, but your intervention is very interesting and meaningful. Also with a picture, so you really transport us into the Paramo and in Ecuador. And of course, water security and the right to water is critical also for the rural community. This links to one of the questions done in the chat, and maybe later Emre and Edward can make a point on how, for example, water projects could be also addressed, no? And so also for and rural communities that work differently, but sometimes get all this knowledge because of the partnership if they see possibilities. But we will first hear from the our last speaker, Amandine. Are you ready to tell us about the project between two regions? And I will also ask you to be short, and I might ask all the participants that if you allow us that we today would extend 10 minutes more because we are out of time. Sorry.
Thank you, Sarah. Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Amandine Casquet and I work at Cités Unies France. I'm going to be quick, but I'm going to say a few words about Cités Unies France, which is the head of a transpartisan and multi-level network of French local governments involved in international relations and decentralized cooperation. I've been asked to talk about projects of decentralized cooperation between France and Latin America. So I'm going to present you the project Essentia, which is a decentralized cooperation project between the Centre-Val de Loire region in France and the province of Rio Negro in Argentina. This project was financed by the French Ministry of Europe and Foreign Affairs, and more specifically, the departments of dedicated to decentralized cooperation. This project was initiated in 2023 and aims to highlight the response of forests to climate change. The project includes a wide range of actors, both public and private, like ministries, embassies, universities, centers, engineers. And the aim of Essentia is to produce data on forest and climate change to raise awareness of the issue among stakeholders and the society in general. I'm going to present you briefly the main goals of these projects, which are improved monitoring of forest response to climate change, more relevant and up-to-date data available in real time, collective, shared, and open instrumented systems, increase the value of observations, scientists, local authorities, professionals, stakeholders from the forest wood industry, and society in general, serve as a model for other regions and countries, raise awareness, educate, and disseminate. And finally, create a science society dynamic to move towards more consensual-based adaptation solutions. Maybe to briefly present the context, the two territories, both densely forested, are not identical in terms of forests and have different policies, histories, and cultures. In both areas, a sense of urgency is driving the scientists and forest users to organize themselves to develop solutions for adapting to climate change, based both on the most relevant and recent scientific knowledge and on the experience and technical and local knowledge of those working in the fields while taking into account the diversity of the issues at stake. In each region, research laboratories, local authorities, institutions, and citizen organizations already have experience of working together through projects aimed at transferring research results to society and contributing to the search for operational solutions. Therefore, this specific project highlights the interest of building and reinforcing links between two territories through decentralized cooperation with financial tools to help the local authorities to develop these relations, and that enables local authorities to implement solutions on their territories based on different experiences on global concerns, like the impact of climate change on biodiversity in this particular case.
Thank you very
for
much.
listening.
Thank you very much, Amandine. And yeah, now I think we can come back for some mini points. But first, all of you, thank you so much. I think in the beginning, Kees told us it's so important to listen, and to listen when we listen to all you, how many aspects of capacity can actually build into or through decentralized project cooperation project. This is very impressive. And at the other side, on the other hand, we see, and I think interesting, the expert, they always said, oh, nature-based solutions, but there are so many elements that local government are doing. And so now for Emre and Edward, could you make maybe some points? So here, of course, the point of accessing is important, in particular for the ERBD, but also how smaller cities can get engaged, or maybe build this capacity that is built in projects. So this is ongoing processes. Could this be connected to financing systems, not necessarily by your banks, but maybe also generally, because they all create a lot of capacity and strategy to address climate change. So Emre, would you maybe make some reactions?
Of course, thank you. I think, sorry, Edward already mentioned that we're kind of complementary to one another. I mean, first of all, we have different geographies to begin with, EIB and EBRD. So that's, you know, one of the things that kind of complements one another. As for small cities within the Green Cities Network, we have cities like Cairo and Istanbul, cities you know, that have 20 million of populations. But then we also have cities that have populations like 60,000, Alba Iulia from Romania, Mediaș from Romania, once again. So the 50,000, I've seen this in the comments, is a strict threshold for us. So we can only work with cities that have more than 50,000 population. But we are trying to support them as much as we can. I mean, regardless of the population, it doesn't matter if it's 20 million or it's 51,000, let's say. We are trying to, you know, support them with the capacity building. Obviously, the needs are different, and that's why our Green Cities Action Plan methodology can be quite adaptable and can be tailor-made depending on the city's needs. It's not only the obviously the population, but also the needs are different, because one city could have a coastal, you know, could have coastal problems, marine environment related problems, whereas the other one could have, and this is for instance the case with Gelmim in Morocco, problems with sandstorms, desertification, etc. So we're really trying hard, and that's also one of the reasons why we have limited number of cities, because we're trying to have this tailor-made approach for each city and working with them to develop these actions. I've also seen in the chat box about the master plans. That's quite important as well. The Green Cities Action Plans do not generate projects out of the blue, but rather rely on the plans that the city, that the national governments already have in those regions, in those cities. So we're trying to bring them together, filter them from a lens of, let's say, banking, because we're really trying to bring together compiled projects that are bankable, that are that can be taken for the next step, which is implementation. We're also including not only investment actions, but also policy actions that could enable such investments.
Good.
So I'll just stop here and yeah.
No, thank you very much. And it's clear. And I think also those cities who do not work with you because are in other regions, it is always it's a similar methodology. So to investment is as better as the risk is small, and the risk is small when planning is good. So Edward, what would be your advice to the cases you have been observing?
2 points, if I may, Sarah. On the small cities, if I take the example I showed of Salento, where we're getting private sectors to come in and renovate public buildings, that this only works at scale. You want it at scale because you're not going to attract the private sector for one hospital. So there, a lot of that program, that this year and a half of preparation was about getting, I think, 25 municipalities to work together. So there's something to bear in mind about whether you can aggregate investment needs across smaller cities into a larger package. And I think that's something that certainly, if you're going down the private sector route, is worth thinking about. Difficult to do in practice, but worth it. On the and one other point, so it was completely changing tack. A lot of the discussion I picked up was, really interesting stuff around nature-based forest ecosystems in different parts of the world. All I'm going to say on this is, I think, and we're not there now, but the MDBs collectively are working quite hard on trying to make Article 6 of the Paris Agreement work. And Article 6, if those of you who don't know it, is about getting carbon markets and potentially even let's say you can go beyond carbon markets to think about some non-market spaces that would include adaptation, to get financial flows. That there is willingness to pay out there for those projects. How you can secure it is difficult, but Article 6 is there to do it. So we don't have a short-term answer, I'm afraid, although there's the voluntary carbon market, which is another story for another day. But I think that is something that I think as the MDB collective we are working quite hard to try to move that on. So hopefully within this time next year or the year after, we'll have a more concrete way on that. But that should work.
Thank you very much, Edward. Actually, this is exactly why we in UCLG and also in CMR, we lobby so much for advocate for also the smaller size. No, I think the point of if you want to access a carbon market, you have to be or a huge landowner or a huge city. And but actually, the development model, climate change reminds us, is not to go for agglomerated systems, and then the markets, financial market force, because they strengthen the agglomeration. So. This is, of course, leading us to this last point, because we in UCLG, and also CMR, we always go to the COP and we make points on the carbon market, on the climate financing. And I have here my colleague Pablo Mariani, who will give us a short insight on how we work in the COP, so that you also, as many of you are members to us, you understand why we make that point. But I think Edward has given a wonderful ground. Pablo, can you make a point on this?
Yes, of course. Can anyone put on the presentation I made? Yes. Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Pablo Mariani. I'm Policy Officer at UCLG World Secretariat, as Sara has introduced me. And I want to tell you a little bit of how we have been advocating at the UNFCCC process alongside CEMR and through the LGMA. So next one. So what is the LGMA? If you haven't heard of this before during today or yesterday, it's the major group that convenes local authorities and local governments and municipal authorities. So this group was one of the first three major groups created within the UNFCCC process, and it's chaired by and facilitated by ICLE, Local Governments for Sustainability, a sister organization of UCLG or CEMR. And ICLE chairs this major group on behalf of the Global Task Force of Local and Regional Governments. So while we have this major group working, that's called the LGMA, that influences the UNFCCC process, the UN climate change process, the framework for climate convention. We have the Global Task Force influencing and advocating at the higher United Nations level. And there's this continuous sort of dynamic between these two. So next one. So what has been achieved for us, perhaps as a constituency, during the last three COPs? During COP26 in Glasgow, we saw for the first time in the Glasgow Climate Pact the inclusion of the language on multi-level. And this was huge, because even if there was acknowledgement in the Paris Agreement of this, it was now an accelerator and really a way to start including the structural work of advocacy of local and regional governments inside of the negotiations of the pact. And this was, of course, seen and further in COP27, where we saw the Sharm el-Sheikh implementation plan with mention of local and regional governments, where we saw the COP presidency, COP27 presidency Egypt, launched the SURGE initiative, the Sustainable Urban Resilience for Next Generation initiative, and where we held with UN Habitat the first climate and urbanization ministerial. And as these things built on, well, not in the least, of course, very important, COP27 saw the launch of the discussions to establish a fund for responding to losses and damages due to climate change. This was launched there, but it was on the first day of COP28, where after 5 meetings of a transitional committee, this text was approved. And COP28 saw an even higher involvement and inclusion of the work that we have been carrying from so many years in terms of advocacy. We saw for the first time a transition away from fossil fuels and links there to some national governments. We saw the adoption of this loss and damage fund text. We see a roadmap mission that is going to be structured by a troika, the presidency of the UAE, of Azerbaijan and Brazil, the past COP and the next two COPs. We saw the first ever local climate action summit, an initiative of the COP28 presidency in support of philanthropies, where we have, as a constituency and through the LGMA, participated, helped organize, and advocated on behalf of local governments there. We saw the global stocktake, where we saw high mention, could have been better, but we saw at least mention of the urban component and local component of NDCs, of nationally determined contributions. The global goal adaptation, where there's also mention of local and regional governments, and the launch of the Coalition for High Ambition Partnerships, which we'll talk in a little bit, and the second urban ministerial on climate and urbanization. Next, please. So what are the key, perhaps, mentions that we saw to multi-level action at COP28? In that loss and damage fund, even though it's a small fund, and even though it's a fund that that is still complex and is still in negotiation, and with all the things that come with it. We saw three dimensions to direct access from the funding to subnational governments in paragraph 20E, 44, and 48E, and also a goal to set up a consultative forum, a consultative mechanism with stakeholder groups, including local governments, to help steer the mechanism that will be lost on damage on. On the global stocktake, the first global stocktake on climate action, we saw 7 paragraphs mentioning multi-level action, paragraph 161, specifically mentioning multi-level action, paragraph 191, setting the roadmap for mission 1.5, which is going to be held up at the COP30. Almost finished. And the global adaptation with these 5 paragraphs mentioned. Of course, this is not only the only things we do. This COP, we saw a high inclusion of non-traditional themes on nature, food, culture, and health. And this is part of the work that we do as UCLG and we do with CEMR. For example, CEMR has been holding a high-level political breakfast in collaboration with UCLG Africa. And these spaces of dialogue that are not really structured within the negotiations, but within the ambience of COP28, help foster new conversations, new discussions, new points of contact. And one other thing that I wanted to really highlight about the work that CEMR is doing during COPs is always ensuring that they bring a youth elected representative, ensuring that this not as outsider views, but this usually left behind kind of views and are immersed and in the middle of our advocacy plan and narrative within the COPs. Next one, Sarah. So just a quick presentation, a very quick, because I know I'm out of time. This CHAMP initiative that has been launched during COP28, very important initiative, will be an accelerator for financing and for nationally determined contributions. Not only can of course include adaptation plans and energy plans, but at least it will need to include nationally determined contributions. Has 72 signatories as of now, a good deal from the European Union. And I think the role that's important to start playing as these initiatives take shape, as a secretariat is built, as we see the national finance accelerators being set up, and as we see the champion countries that will be starting to lead this process, is understanding that European Union municipalities have a long experience and tradition in what multi-level governance is. I mean, the term multi-level comes from the European process in terms of your cohesion policies. So there's really a vision and an advantage from CEMR at the moment, and with UCLG, of course, to make of this initiative a really successful one. So that's my presentation. Thank you. Anything else you want to know? There was the email there, and you're sure if you can find it when you for the presentation.
Thank you very much, Pablo. And yeah, here you can see, I mean, there is, of course, a long way to go until a small village can really fund the water services and the water, for example, the right of nature, not only the right to nature, but the right of nature. So there's a long way to go. And this is how it works. So we go slowly from COP to COP, and the community is always growing. But of course, the responses are not only to us. So we are one of many players. But we are continuing going. And I'm so happy that I have here now, and you will see the best. The last speaker is always a highlight, because she's coming from Brazil. It is Patricia Menezes, and she is really not only an activist on climate, she is, I think, a strategic person in climate policies in her hometown Barcarena, but also in Belém, in Brazil, and in all the networks. So Patricia, you will tell us a little bit where do we go, because we will have a COP in Belém. It is soon coming. Patricia, can you address us for 5 minutes?
Yes. Hi, Sarah. Nice to see you again, even if online. So I will be very quick because I know that we are late. And it's also very late for me. It's 1:30 a.m. in South Korea, where I am. So I've answered the question that you and Eva sent me earlier. I think that the hugest challenge to COP30 in Belém, it is still how the city will prepare to receive all these people, because today the city still doesn't have the urban infrastructure to host events from this size. Are you listening, Sarah?
Yes.
Okay. So, but this is something that President Lula keeps saying, that we don't have to worry because the national government will invest everything that it's needed to prepare the city. I think that related to the opportunities to COP30 not in Belém, but I'm telling you, I think about the Amazon in general, and not speaking only about the Amazon in Brazil, because the Amazon are 90 countries. It's that when you talk about the Amazon, people usually imagine a forest, right? But it's very important, and I think that this is our opportunity to show to the world that 80% of the population of the Amazon region lives in urban areas, not in the forest.
Yeah, 40 million. Mm-hmm.
Yes, 80% of the population. It's not 80, 80% lives in urban areas. And that's very important to think is that the mobility that works in any part of the world doesn't work in the Amazon region, because the Amazon is completely different. The distances are huge. The rivers are huge, looks like a sea. The soil is completely different. So you need to think about urban development, about climate adaptation in cities in a different way. I think that, but I think that it is a huge opportunity to show to the world that we need to think about innovation, about other kind of urban planning to adapt to climate change in the Amazon region, not only in Brazil. I think that I stick to my time, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you very much, Patricia. We are impressed you speaking from Seoul at this time, so late, but definitely you are right. We have to think about other models, not only in Amazon, also in Borneo, where we will have a new capital city of Indonesia. So there are a lot of challenges. And we as municipalists, probably we know of the complexity, but we are not afraid of the complexity and of the diversity of tasks that is waiting. So this was a wonderful closing, and I thank you all very much. Also, we have still 70 people, so we see you have been following with a lot of interest. Thank you very much to the speakers. It was really inspiring, and I think also to bring these worlds together of cities, of regions, of projects, of cooperation, of dreams, and of facts, and of how we go forward, and that there is a will that we connect and we go together was very strong. So what you please, if you want to do a favor to us, you can first follow us in social media. Unfortunately, we still use Twitter, but PLATFORMA is making a lot of communication. And also here, Eva is celebrating the responses to the evaluation format. It is important for us. It is important for our program to be accountable to the members and to our leaders who have trusted us to do this Climate Academy. Thank you so much for your attention, and applause to all of you and to all the colleagues.
Thank you.